Okay, hopefully this will be the last of the sick tutorials. Delete that so I can show how that works here in a second. I was Zooming with one of the other students and they were asking for some feedback on their file. I decided I'm just going to use this kind of as a test to cover some of these render things that we would be doing in class today if I were not sick. So my apologies. I think I'm around the worst of it, but this cough is kind of a pain. So anyways, I'm going to cover lots of different things in this kind of quickly, but this is meant to be kind of an overview to get you started up to speed so we can start seeing some renders out of this if you haven't done that before. All right, so the first thing is, this Kayla has a bunch of cameras, of course, and I don't want to keep coming up here and switching them, at least for now. I don't have to do it right now, but I'm going to go ahead and show that. So the first thing is, if you have your sequence working, try to move this over. My little magic mouse sometimes has a hard time waking up. Let's make that 0, 500. So there's all these blocks right here, right? So each one of these are the little camera switches, and if I move in the camera sequencer, I get to see everything I would want. But at this point, I want to create an Uber camera. Now keep in mind that when I create the Uber camera, it's going to take whatever things that I might have done on these cameras here and keyframe them onto this Uber camera. So if I wanted to come back and change like the angle of view or some other thing, I'd have to basically delete the Uber camera and generate a new one. Or just create a new one and probably call it Uber camera 2 and 3 and 4, whatever. So at this point, and it's very easy, as long as this is functioning correctly, as I talked about in class, and 100% and the same numbers, this is perfect. I'll just go to create and create Uber camera. So an Uber camera shows up here, and now I can just come up to the panel and make Uber camera the one that I'm looking through. Now I don't really need to look through the camera sequencer, have a little more real estate. And I can see how the whole thing's unfolding, right? Through the Maya view and Maya time. So let me just go, let's try to get to kind of a bigger shot. Well, let's just use this here at the beginning, right? All right, so here's our boxy character. Let's just start here. Okay, so rendering. Maya uses a renderer called Arnold. So it's like a third-party renderer that a lot of people use. It's very powerful. There are tons and tons of rendering engines out there that you can use. So to get at the Arnold settings, the quickest thing to do is just go to the tab, which says Arnold, right? What a great little name for this. And there's some icons for creating lights and some other special effecty like things. And then right here we have these little render buttons. These are the ones that we really need to deal with right off the bat. So if I click on this, what you can see is a picture appears, right? So this is the Arnold render viewer. It basically is this little thing. So if I close this and I click this, it brings up the viewer, but it doesn't kick off a render. So if I close that again, if I press this one, it basically says render, and to render it, it also brings up the viewer. If I were to bring up just the viewer and it wasn't rendering, you can see that's kind of working on this. The image is resolving as it goes along. There's a little stop and play button right here for the IR, the interactive photorealistic render. It has a little refresh button. It also has a little, it's a, for the preferences, I call it a little saw blade, right? You shouldn't have to do anything with this. The preferences should be set, hopefully, to not change anything. If your scene does look a little bit weird, if you went in here, the gamma should be set at 1. Don't use the exposure. I'll talk about that later. So everything else should just be the same here, right? So this will immediately start to render for me, right? It is important, actually, I think when I first pulled up this file, it was set... Kaylee had made the backstage layer a template. So when I clicked on this, there was really no lighting because this was in this template mode. So I'm going to refresh this. Oops. So every once in a while, like when it loads, what Arnold tries to do is pull everything into memory, and so it can quickly render. And if you make a lot of changes, Maya or Arnold hasn't really pulled that stuff into its short-term memory to be able to quickly make this. So sometimes if it's not updating, just close the window and kick it off again, and then it automatically goes back to your scene and says, oh, what's all the light doing and everything. So you can see we already have some scene. We have some light going on. This is kind of nice, right? Yeah, you can see the edge of the world here. You can see a little bit of the sky. The other thing too is it automatically, because I had set it beforehand, went to the perspective shape, or the Uber camera shape, which is the Uber camera. But I can also cut between all the different cameras, right? So Uber camera at that point was at slide camera shape. Here's another one here, right? So I can go through all the little shots that are in this. Let's go back to Uber camera. Well, in fact, let's see, what was a good one? Yeah, no, let's go back to, we couldn't go back to perspective shape, right? So this is our perspective camera. So this is kind of the whole scene. We're not going to use this, but also be a good way to kind of dial in what our light is doing. So how do we access the light? How do we change what's up here, right? In fact, let me just go back into the perspective camera. So I get a little perspective here. Let me back up. All right. All right, so here's our world, right? And we have this big blue dome. You can see this here. So this is like the middle of the day, right? So this is not all that exciting. So how do we change the lighting in here? And then I'm going to talk about like how this render is doing what it's doing. So if I unfold the stage, there's an item called the AI, the Arnold image, Sky Dome light. If I click on it, it shows up here in the channel box. I want to look at it in the attribute editor, right? So this is kind of the expanded channel box, right? With all these little details in here. There's lots of little things that we can change, including the intensity, like how bright it is. Sometimes you wouldn't really change that too much. You could affect basically the exposure of it. Let's just leave that back at its default. So there are some things that you can mess with, but for now I would just say don't touch this stuff because you don't know enough about it. But in here, the first one of the Sky Dome, so again, I unfolded stage group. I went down inside there, and so these are the pieces making up the stage, right? So basically this is a light. Inside that light, it has a color, and you can see over here, these things have little checkerboards. This means that you can connect something to it. You can put an image in there. You can also put a procedural or a mathematical image. So that's what we've done here. And if you want to get to that, I can just click on it. As you would imagine, there's several ways to do that. And then we have the settings. So this is the physical sky, and these are the things that define what it is that it would do. So some of these don't really, you're like, what does that mean? What's turbidity and albedo? Don't worry about that stuff for now. I would just say leave those alone. The three that you care about are the intensity, which you might want to tweak, but the main thing is the elevation and azimuth. So let's turn this down. Oh my God, look at this. This is pretty exciting, right? We're putting the sun kind of a low. In fact, we can see the shadows, right? They're just casting. So this is like at dusk. And then what's this? Azimuth, right? So think of the one as the height in the sky. Oops, there we go. Look at that. Can you even see that? There is the sun right there. It even draws it for you. So this is all kind of a mathematical coloring gradient that happens on the, excuse me, on the sky. All right, so we can affect that based on what we need for our scene. So obviously, in Keyless, let's go back in here, right? So now we want to be able to set this up based on the mood that she wants for this. we can keyframe these things, right? So you could maybe reposition the sun if it's causing a problem for a various shot or a various camera that you've set up. Hopefully you don't have to do too much of that. And in this case, because it's a little bit darker, I can turn up the intensity a little bit so that maybe it's brighter up here. Right, and maybe I'll just make it 2.5. So just a little bit, right? Of course, the brighter, if it's dark in here, we make it brighter, then it's going to get kind of blown out over here in the sky. So it's all up to you. Oh, I kind of like that one, right? Kind of low in the sky. So nice little shadows and shapes cut across there. So I'm going to leave that there. Again, you could do crazy things. Don't do it. I could tint the sky. And most of this kind of looks silly because that's not the way we're used to seeing the sky. This is set up, basically these are set up as kind of bases, and then you could maybe tweak them a little bit, but the only way you would really want to put some solid colors in here is if you were doing an atmosphere like on Mars. Just don't do it. It never looks right. It always looks kind of dorky. So I would just leave that alone. All right, so you can modify this sky to be the kind of sky that you would want for your scene. And I can jump through the animation. I can see what's going on here. Right? Right, so again, we can tweak, and you can always change this and modify. I think the main thing is just get familiar with those settings, and you can try some different things. Ooh, mysterious. Let's turn that up a little bit. Okay, so I'll call that good. This one, it's a little tricky here because we can't quite see the edge because this gray is the same as that. I think if you do run into a situation like that, we haven't talked about materials, but next time in class, we'll talk about maybe assigning a slightly darker gray material to your props or things like that so that just there's contrast and you don't get a situation like this where you can't really tell where the edge of this box here is and the giant landscape. At this point, they all have kind of the default material on them. So we'll fix that later. Okay. All right, so that's the basics of just messing with the light. I can see that I'm approaching like 12.5 minutes. So I'm gonna pause on that one, and then I'm gonna come back and talk about the render settings and why the render image looks like what it is, like how it's working. All right?